Okay, so my mom and dad purchased, I'm the oldest of 11 children, and I could probably tell epic stories about fights within the family, but then Jim would post it and it would create a shitstorm of arguments, and the stories were pretty old, but it would just open too many wounds. So it is about my family, but it's not about the inner family stories we heard. This is more like the Montagues and the Capulets. So they bought this big house because we had outgrown our home in North Wales, and they had this really big home that was in quite disrepair in Ambler that had 7 bedrooms. And at the time, I think my mom and dad were expecting their 8th child. They eventually had 11. And we moved into this house, and one of the interesting things about this house, it was built around 1890, and there was a carriage house next to it that was also deserted. Both of the homes were deserted. And for the first several years, the carriage house, was empty. And I mean, who in their right mind would move in next to a family with 8, 9, and more kids? But eventually, an elderly couple named the Rodriguezes moved in. And they quickly became pretty annoyed living next to so many children. And we shared a common driveway for the first year or so, and it wasn't paved. It was mostly sand and gravel. And my brother and his friends would ride their bikes and spin out and throw sand all over the place because this became their track. And Mr. and Mrs. Rodriguez didn't take real kindly to this. So after maybe a year of trying to get the kids to not to drive on their driveway, they decided to put a fence down the driveway. And my dad, called a lawyer and said, "Can they do this?" And said, "Yeah, they can do this. They have a right to put a fence down." So my dad had to put widen our driveway, and they were also building a driveway. Now, at some point, they were going to put a little buffer at the end of the road, and they had a bunch of fairly big quarry stones that they were going to use to make a sort of a wall at the end of the driveway. And one day, my mom noticed Mrs. Rodriguez bringing scraps of food out to this little mountain of rocks that had been delivered from the quarry. And we thought, what is she doing? And it turned out she was feeding rats. There were rats in the stone. And so naturally this was a little bit alarming to my folks because they had a lot of kids. And the kids probably thought, hey, rats, those look pretty cool. Let's go check this out. So we were warned not to go play with the rats and not to feed the rats. And, I'm sure the borough was called, and the arguments between my parents kind of escalated. And this would have been probably 1967. I would have been around 15, and I was on the 3rd floor, and my bedroom faced the Rodriguez house. And I thought to myself, I called my brother in and I said, "Paul, let's hook up the stereo system and play that Led Zeppelin album that we just got." And there's a wonderful song on it called "Your Time Is Gonna Come," where Robert Plant is screaming out the lyrics and the choruses, "Your time is gonna come." And we thought this would be a great message to send to Mrs. Rodriguez. So of course we played the song, pretty loud, and the husband came home, Larry Rodriguez came home, and by now the fence was built, so he had to walk all the way down the fence as he was really agitated, and he said, "Turn that music box down, turn that music box down, don't play that kind of music." It's a free world. It was Led Zeppelin. It's 1967. Everyone was playing it except the Rodriguezes. So we turned it off, and my mom calmed things down, and then about a week later, me and my brother thought, "No, let's try that Led Zeppelin song again." So we played the Led Zeppelin song again, and this time Larry wasn't around, and Mrs. Rodriguez came out with a butcher knife. And she's coming down the driveway with a butcher knife. And Trudy, my sister, comes running into the house. Mom, Roddy Rodriguez is coming at us with a butcher knife. She's coming down the driveway. And my mother, who's got 9 kids, is kind of looking frantically around. Get in the house, please, everybody come in the house. And so she called the police and get upstairs, everyone get upstairs, don't make a sound, and locked all the doors in the house. And we're kind of listening, and we can see her coming down, and then all of a sudden we hear at the back door, the window of our back door is broken. And we can hear her kind of scream and reaching in to try to unlock the door, but thank God she had cut herself. And so probably decided she needed triage and she probably better go home. And by then, a couple minutes later, the police came, and the crazy woman, didn't bother us after that. And I'm pretty sure the rats were also eradicated. So, please, if you're living next to a family with 10 or 11 children and you want peace and quiet, it's probably not a good idea to consider buying that particular house. So.
Chuck, everybody.